Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today in Masechtas Megillah daf Yud Beis. We are going to begin on Yud Beis with Aleph, the third wide line by the two dots. We're now going to continue in learning the various psukim in Megillah's Esther. Chel Paras Umadai, Hapartimim. Partimim is referring to these governors of these respective provinces. Uksiv Malche Lamalche Madai Faras. So why is it written out of order? So Omer Rava asnuye asnu bahadadi minan malche minaychu I parche minaychu malche minan I parche. So basically what this means is they made conditions between each other. They said that if you are as kings, we'll be as governors, and if you are as kings, we'll be as governors. Look in Rashi. Samach apartimim etzel modai uksiv malche modai pras. The samach malche etzel modai. So the question isn't how it's out of order, but it mentions like melech, this great level of leadership, is referring to one and not the other. So the answer is that they ended up making conditions for one another. So as Aisher covered Malchuso, so he wanted to show the beauty of his wife Vashti. Some Rabbi Yossi Barchanin Melamed Shalavish Bigdei Kahuna. That actually this is referring to Achashverosh, who wore the Bigdei Kahuna himself. He wore the clothes of the Kohen Gadol. Ksiv Hacha Yakir Tiferes Gudu Lasai. Ksiv Hasa Makavod Ulasifares, which is referring to the garments of the Kohen Gadol. In fact, some people say the word chur, the letter ches, which is the numerical value of 8, which corresponds to the garments of the Kohen Gadol, is another hint to the fact that he wore these bigdei Kohen Gadol. So we're going to see again, as we saw in yesterday's daf, he felt that the Beis HaMikdash was no longer in existence, and therefore he threw a party on the third year. Hashem's not going to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash, and now what does he do? He takes all the kalim, he wears the bigdei kahuna, and he now almost is reclaiming that the capital, the center of the world, is Shushan Habira. Keeps saying Shushan Habira, as though to emphasize this is the main focal point of the world, not Yerushalayim, not the Beis HaMikdash. Some say he was wise, some say he wasn't so smart. It makes sense what he did. What did he do? He brought in what did he do? He brought close those who were far away first to Bnei Masya into the city. Because the people who are closer to him, he could always easily mafias them, he could always appease them because he's nearby. It would have made sense to bring close those people who are close to you first, says Rashi. Then he brought in the people who are far away before the people who are close to him. So why was it a mistake, possibly, by doing this? Because if he would have allegiance with those people who are far away from him, with people who are close to him, rather, so they would support him even if other people would rebel against him. And this is an interesting phenomena. As being a rabbi, there's this concept of retention, and there's also an element of recruitment. We're trying to always do kiruv. We want to bring more congregants into our shul. We want to be able to do kiruv v'chokim. What sometimes happens is you end up forgetting about the people that are the diehards, those individuals who are already dedicated to your synagogue, to learning Torah, to coming to shul on a regular basis. And this perhaps is this notion that we have to know how to have this balance, to also show allegiance to them as well. Shol Talmidav es Rav Shimon ben Yochai. So the Rashbi was asked the famous question: Why did they deserve to be punished, that they almost got killed by Haman in his plot. So Imru Atem, why don't you tell me? Which is an unbelievable thing. What do you mean you tell me? They're asking you. So we think the reason is because they got Hana from the Suda of Achashverosh. So he said, Im Kain Shibashushan Yihargu, Shibachol Olam Kuloi Al Yihargu. So he shouldn't have harmed everyone, not everyone went there. So Emor Ata. So he said, so tell us what's the right answer. Because they bowed down to an idol. So that when it came to them bowing down, the question is, as Rashi says, why would they deserve a miracle if they were idol worshippers? So the answer, Rashi says, is that they only did it with inside. They had yira. They were scared of, they didn't do it, they're going to get killed. They didn't really believe in idols. Therefore they bowed down. Some say Haman had an idol on his neck. So bowing down to him was akin to Avodah Zarah. They didn't really believe in Avodah Zarah. They just knew the consequences if they didn't do it. So because of that, so Hashem also only not in an absolute way brought about the punishment upon them. So one thing you can learn is, when it comes to a teacher, a student asks a question, perhaps instead of you just giving an answer, let them try to come up with the answer, which is an interesting thought on its own. The other question, though, is, how come, it sounds like they got it wrong, and then he gave him a right answer, so why didn't he just tell him the right answer right away? So some people say that it's actually the difference between the Rabbi and his students are two different generations. And when it comes to the Klal Yisrael possibly self-destructing, it could be for multiple reasons. So the Rabbi couldn't answer this question himself. He said the answer based on his interpretation of his own internal struggle versus perhaps that of a later generation. So the later generation is the issue of getting Hana from the Sudas Shos Rasha, trying to, again, becoming close to the Rasha and getting Hana from forbidden foods or doing things which one should not be doing. Listening and accepting your taivas, your various desires. However, when it came to him, the Rashbi, he felt it was based on Avodah Zarah. So perhaps it's going to tell us that every generation there are different struggles that we all have, and therefore he couldn't answer the question, even though, of course, it's referring to the time of the Purim story, but we relate the Purim story to us as well, and how it affects us. And now we're up to the two dots. B'chatzar ginas bisan hamelach. So he was in the courtyard, the garden, the palace. The king, which one was it? So Rabbi Shmuel Chadaimer, haroy l'chatzar chatzar, haroy l'gina l'gina, haroy l'bitan l'bitan. It all depended on your status. If you were on a higher level, then you were in a nicer area in the palace, etc. Chadaimer hashivan b'chatzar. They dwelled in the courtyard, zikasan begina, but they didn't make a chazaka, like staying there in the garden. Basically, what it means is that it became so crowded that the overflow ended up going into the garden, ended up going into the bitan, to the palace. And then finally was able to hold this large crowd. They opened up two doors, one to the garden, one to the palace. So my chur, what is this referring to? So Rabbi Omer chari chari. Rashi says masa machat. It's a type of network of using nets. Melechas hamatzos, using these like fine tapestries of nets. Ha'isa suin the kabim, and they had holes, like a chor is a hole. So if you look at needlework, they have in it holes. Shmuel Omer melas lavana hatzil lahem. That it was chor is a language of like whiteness, and it has to do again these beautiful tapestries, these beautiful these beautiful pictures of the light that were crafted. karpas. So Amar Yossi Bar Chanina karim shel pasim. So what is this referring to? This is referring to this type of garment, right, which was a karim shel pasim. And people actually learn out from here that when it comes to Pesach night, when we dip the karpas, it's interesting that what is the word karpas? So some say it means it's a vegetable, it's celery. The truth is, karpas, over here the Gemara is telling us it's karim shel pasim, which sounds a lot like the garment that was on Yosef HaTzadik, the ksonas pasim, which refers to the special garment that was dipped into blood. We're almost reenacting the whole notion of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, because when we study and we talk about the Haggadah on Pesach night, we're not just talking about the exodus of Egypt, we're talking about the entire history of how we got to Egypt in the first place, which had to do, of course, with the selling of Yosef. So some say we dip the karpas, represents the ksonas pasim based on this. So Tana Yehuda Eimer, Haroy L'Kesav L'Kesav, Haroy L'Zahav L'Zahav. If you're fit to silver, you got silver, gold. That's how you were lying down on these different things. You're going to cause jealousy. Some people are in gold, some people only get silver. Rather, it was of silver. But let's say their footstool was of gold. Bahat Vashesh, Amrabasi, Avanim. These were precious stones. Shemis chaytetais al balehen. And Rashi says, what is this referring to? Ritzvah asolahem ba'avanim chatutos. There was this like special flooring. Adam el b'tayrach. It means that it only comes to a person with great difficulty. That you have to go after it, and it takes a tremendous amount of time until it costs you a tremendous amount of money to be able to obtain these special jewels. So what is that referring to? So Rabbi Omer Dari. It's referring to rose. Shmuel Omer Evan Toiva Yesh B'Karchayam V'Dor Shema. It was actually a special stone, a precious jewel, and that was its name. Hoshiba Emsa Suda. They put in the middle of the meal Umi'ir Lahem Katsaraim, and it lit up everything just like the afternoon, which is comparable to a special stone that lit up the teva. The very Mishmol Tana Shikar Dror L'Chol Bali Tzachayra. That it was called dror l'chol bali schar for all people who are engaged in business. Says Rashi, nachas ruach l'vnei malchusai l'havruhem meches shel secharim. That it was a form of making a person feel better when it came to kings, because it removed the taxes upon the business people. Vashkois b'kli zahav v'kilim v'kilim shainim. What does it mean? Shainim mishunim miboile. So Amurava Yatzabas Kalbi Amalahem Rishainim Kolu Mimne Kalim. The original ones, for example, Belshazzar and his ilk, they were punished because they took the Kalim. Vatem Shainim Behem. And you're basically like repeating in their ways of doing the same incorrect thing. The Ein Malchus Rav. There was a lot of wine. So Amar Rav Mulamed Shekol Echad Ve'echad Hishgahu Yain Shigadol Himenu B'Shanim. That, as we know, old wine is of higher quality. So all the wine was at such high level that it was even older than the person drinking it. V'Shasiyah Kadas. So what does that mean? My Kadas, with intent or knowledge. Amar Chanan Mishimar Meir Kadash Al-Taira. What's that? And why would it be Kadash Al-Taira? What is the das of Torah? Ma dash al Torah achil meruba mishtia. Av sudasa shalois arasha achil meruba mishtia. There was more food than drink. Ein oinus, the drinking, there was no one was forced to do it. They all drank from their own country, the wine that they're used to, and therefore you didn't have to force upon some type of a drink that people have never heard of, but rather it's something that they were comfortable drinking, and therefore in oinus. Lasos kirtzon ish v'ish. What's ish v'ish? So Marav lasos kirtzon Mordechai v'Haman. Mordechai dechsev ish Yehudi. So Mordechai was called an ish, and Haman ish sarer. So again, it's interesting, as we saw in Dav Zion, that really Haman and Mordechai, perhaps a person could drink so much until they don't know between Haman and Mordechai. Over here, they're both called an Ish. Ish Yehudi, and Haman is Ish Sar Be'oyev. They're both an Ish, that's the starting point, but then what comes afterwards? You either are a Yehudi, you're someone that follows the ways of Torah, or you're Tsar Be'oyev. Gam Vashti Hamalchus Asa Mishnei Nashim Beis HaMalchus Beis HaNashim B'boile. So Omer Rava Shnei Mudavar Aveir Nischabnu. Not only was Achashverosh engaged in sin, but so was Vashti. Hainu Dami Inshi Ihu Bikari Bi'itite Biboitzini. So he was Bikari, which are Deluim Gedoiles, very large gourds. And her, as we continue to Yud Beis Mud Beis, were, as Rashi says, Deluyin Ketanis. Says Rashi, Zen Noiv, V'zu Efes. They were both engaged in licentious behavior of forbidden relations. So it was on the seventh day he was filled with wine. So atu ad hashtalotav libe b'chamra. He was drinking wine the whole time. He had a 180-day party. Now this is the seventh day of the last 7 days. So Omer Rava Yom Hashvi Shabbos Haya. It was actually Shabbos. Yisrael Eichem V'Sheisin Maschilin B'Divrei Torah B'Divrei Tishbachos. It comes to show the difference and to contrast Klal Yisrael to Haman. That when we drink, we say Torah, we sing Hashem's praises. They say foolishness. We find by Achashverosh. They were saying Mediyos nice, Parsiyos nice. Each one was saying that their women are the most beautiful women in the world. My vessel that I use, that's how he refers to his wife, which obviously very derogatory, a lack of respect, says she's a kazdi. Do you want to see her? In, of course. But I want you to see her unclothed. Person is judged mida keneged mida. They get a quid pro quo, measure for measure. She used to take the girls, the Jewish girls, umavshitan arumois, and she used to take their clothes off. The ois behen malacha b'Shabbos, to make them do work on Shabbos. Zachas Vashti. So Achashverosh, the next day after Vashti was killed, he remembered her. He remembered what she did and all the decrees. That just like she did, so too happened to her. And Malka Vashti said, no way, I'm not going to come to Michti. Pritzta Havoy, she was a poet, she had complete immorality, so who cares? The Omer Marshnei L'Davar Aveira Nischabnu. So my temple also, why won't she come? Some Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. Malamid Shaparcha Bat Saras. She actually had saras, she had leprosy, and therefore her whole point and her essence was her physical beauty. And once she no longer looked beautiful, she did not want to anymore come. But Masnisa Tana Bar Gavriel can be also a zanav, and he made her a tail. He made her a tail, whatever that means. Zanav could mean she already had a tail, or that she herself became like a follower, like a tail is a follower. So he was very upset that she didn't come. Amai dolka bekuli high, but why did he end up wanting to possibly have her killed and eventually getting killed? Okay, so she didn't come. Is that the biggest deal? So Merabah Shalchale, she didn't just not come, but she sent the following message: Bar Hur Yare, which Rashi says is Shemer Hasusim, those people who are, you Achashverosh, you're no better than people who watch horses. The Abba Lekaba Al Pachamra Shase Velo Rave. My father can drink an excessive amount of wine but not get intoxicated. But who gabra ishtati b'chamre miyad ishtati b'chamre. But you get so intoxicated and you end up doing foolish things. So it's interesting. Why would she say that? And again, it shows self-destructive behavior, because once she was stripped of her beauty, she didn't have much to live for. So he went to the Chachamim. He actually went to the Rabbanan to ask what should be done over here. So when it means Yodei Itim, it means that they understood all the constellations. They knew how to be able to know when is Rosh Chodesh, etc., and when to be able to make an Adar Sheni. Amru, Danuali, judge for me what I should do to Vashti. So Amru, so they said, they said to themselves, what should we do? Namely, Katla, kill her, Lamocher, Pasik, Lechamri, the wine's going to be over, Uboy Le Minon. So he's going to say that we shouldn't have made such a psak. He's going to hold us accountable. Namely, Shavka, let's tell him, just leave her alone. Kamazalzal b'malchusa. He's going to end up saying that we don't treat his malchus very important. So Amalil miyoyim shechara beis hamikdash v'galinu miyartzeinu nitla eitzim imenu v'in anu yoydim l'dundin nefashos. So he said, we don't have the ability to be able to do this after the Beis Hamikdash has been destroyed. So therefore, it's not really up to us to be able to make this decision. Zil gabi amanu moyev. Maybe we should go to amanu moyev diyase b'duchtayu, that they're still in their place. Ke chamra diyasev al dordoi, just like wine that's sitting in its sediments. V'tayma amrulei dechsiv shanan moyev Minurav b'shaykethu el shemarav, v'hurak mekli el kli, v'goyla loy halach, and when they never left. Al kain omad taimo boy uvarechai loy namar. So because the taste in there is still there, so to speak, and its fragrance has not dissipated. Miyad v'kar b'ilav karshan sheisar admasa sarshish. So therefore he gathered up all these people, because again the Chachamim felt it was not a good idea to say anything. Rav Levi kol pasuk zeh al shim karbanos nemar. These words actually are hints to karbanos. Karshana Amar Malchi shows him the Kadosh Baruch, the angel said, Rabbi Shalom, kol mekribu v'necha karim b'nei shana kederech shekribu Yisrael v'necha. So has it ever happened that they brought karbanos just like this which is less than a year old, a special young carbon, as the Klal Yisrael have done? Sheisar klom hekriba v'necha shtei torim, which is the two birds, the two turtle doves. Ad masa klom banu v'necha mizbach adama. Ad masa comes from adama. Have they ever built an altar from the earth? Tarshish klum shimshul v'necha b'bidi kahuna. Which again, interesting enough, Achashverosh was wearing bidi kahuna. Dechsibahu Tarshish, b'shayhem b'yashpe. We know that among the 12 stones, one of them was called Tarshish. So Tarshish is alluding to that. Meres klum mersu b'dam lefanecha. Did they ever mix up the blood, which they were going to sprinkle on the mizbeach for you? Rashi says it's a lashon of megis, which is mixing. Marsina klum mersu b'menachais. Did they ever prepare the menachos, and it says also menachos shaboilon memars lashon megis, again mixing up the menachos, the flour offering, which had in it, depending on what the minch was, could have oils and wine. Menachos menacha memuchan klum hechinu shulchan lefanecha. Have they ever prepared the table, the shulchan, which had the lechem upon him on it? V'yarma memuchan. So out of all these people, Memuchan, whose name was mentioned last, he spoke first. Tana Memuchan zehaman. V'lam nikashmo Memuchan, shemuchan lepranyos. Because he was prepared and ready to do punishment. He was ready to cause problems upon Klal Yisrael and on Vashti. Amar Rav Kahana Mikan shehedit kaifetz bereish. We see from here that someone who is lowly jumps first. because even though he was last in order of greatness, it was written in order of greatness, so the last person he was spoke up first, which we went out from here, the hedit kaifetz baroish, that someone who is a hedyot, so a simpleton, who Haman really was, he didn't know his place. And sometimes that's one of the biggest issues, a person doesn't know their place in life. If it wasn't for the first letters that Achashverosh sent, then the Klal Yisrael would have been wiped out. What was so great about this first letter? So Amri Maihai, he says, you know what? I want every single man to rule their house. Pshita. Lahavi says even a weaver is the leader of his house. Doesn't make any sense. Every single man is the leader of his house. So the fact that he said this, that I want to make sure that as I have Vashti killed, is so that everyone should know that a man should rule their house. So once they heard that, at least in those days, that's how it was. So therefore they said, you know what, his letters really have no significance. So therefore, when it came to the second letters, so the letters of, yes, and eventually we're going to kill on the 13th of Adar, the Jewish people, if they really believed in it, they would have maybe have killed them right away. They would have caused problems right away. It says Rashi, in the middle letter, they would have immediately started killing. They wouldn't have to waited, right? They're Zriz and Makdimin, right? They want to kill because they're terrible people. It wasn't just Haman, it was everyone. But they didn't do it because they realized that this letter really, his letters really are silly and mean nothing. And therefore, because of that, that first letter, interestingly enough, saved everything, which is a very interesting point. Something which seems so insignificant really could have tremendous meaning. The Avgan Melech Bekidim. Amarav, my dechsev kol orim yaseh b'das. Anyone who's literally naked has wisdom. Uksil, a foolish person, yifros ivelas. Kol orim yaseh b'das David. That's referring to David Melech. Dechsev yomil avadav. They wanted to find a Narabasula for David. Kolman dehavile Barta. Anyone who had a daughter, Isenihile. They went to him. They wanted to be able to give his daughter over to the king, who was an important person. However, when it came to Uksil, a foolish person, Yirfos Ivelas Zachashverosh. Dechsev Yavkan Melech Bekidim Koman dehavili Barta it Tamra Mine. They all hid their daughters, and it makes sense because I don't want my daughter to die. He killed Vashti for such an insignificant small thing. I don't want to put my daughter in harm's way either. So that was actually a foolish thing to do, to punish his wife Vashti so harshly, because it would make it more difficult for people to want to give their daughters to him in marriage. Which we also say this out loud. V'gomer ishimini. So my komer ilu yochsikasi l'yachsi v'ozol ad binyamin. So if it's talking about yichus, so it goes until binyamin. Ishimini means binyamin. Elo maishnod hani. So Tanakuon al Shemoi. So in other words, why does it keep saying Mordechai ben Kish ben Yoir Ishimini? It should just keep on going. It comes to tell us, it's teaching us a hint about who Mordechai was. So Tanakuon al Shemoi Nikra. Ben Yair, what does it mean he was the son of Yair? Ben Sheheri Nehim Shal Yisrael, he lightened up the eyes of the Jewish people to feel also with his prayers. Ben Shimi, Ben Sheshama El Tfilasoi, that his tefillas were answered. Ben Kish, Shehikish El Shari Rachmim Ben Niftachlo, that Kish comes word knocking. He knocked on the gates of mercy and they were opened. Karli Yehudi Alma Yehudi Kasi. Sounds like he came from Yehudi. He was Ish Yehuda. Mordechai HaYehudi. They call him Yemini, Alma Mibinyamin Kasi. Where did he come from? Yehuda or Binyamin? Some Rav Nachman Mordechai, Mukhtar, Bini Musoi Hoya, says Rashi, Bishmois Noim Nimos Shem, that with a very nice name he was given, which is Nimos Shem B'Lashin Yavan. So Nimos, so Mukhtar B'Nimuso Hoya, he was crowned with names. Omer Rabbi ben Barchada, Omer Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Aviv ben Yamin, Ve'imam Yehuda. Actually, what happened was his father came from the tribe of Yehuda, so it was Ishimini, but he was also Mordechai Yehudi because his mother. Rabbanan Amri, Mishpachais Misgara Zubazu. There were these families fighting with one another. Mishpachas Yehuda Oimeres, Ana Garim, Shedis Yelad Mordechai, Deloy Katli David Lishimi Ben Gira. So they said, it says they were fighting with one another. Mishpachas Yehuda Oimeres, so the family of Yehuda said, we caused the Misyalad Mordechai, that Mordechai gave birth, to Katli David Lashimi Ben Gera, because David did not kill Shimi Ben Gera. Mishpachas Ben Yaman Amra, Minoi Kaasi, he came from us. Rabbi Amr Knesset Israel Amra, Le'idach Gisa, some say it the other way. Re'uma Asali Hudi, look what this Jewish person did. Uma Shilim Liyamini, Ma Asali Hudi, what did he do? As we continue Gimel Amad Aleph, Deloy Katli David Lashimi. Again, he did not kill Shimi ben Gera, and Rashi now finally says over here, Shahaychai Misa. Even though Shimi ben Gera, he was disrespectful to the king, nonetheless, David showed compassion, did not kill him. Mordechai. And from Shimi ben Gera came Mordechai, the Mekani be Haman. And he ended up being Mekana, he ended up causing punishing or causing problems for Haman. Umashili Muyamini, the Loikati Shol Aga, the Yisol Mini Haman, the Mitzarli Israel. This second part of the pasuk is talking about Shaul, who did not step up and kill Agag, King Agag, who was the king of Amalek, and because of that, Haman ended up being one of his descendants and caused tremendous problems for Klal Yisrael. Really, Mordechai comes from Binyamin. Yamai Karl Yehudi al Shem Shekafar Ba'avodah Zarah. Shekol Kafar Ba'avodah Zarah Nik Yehudi. Anyone who denies idol worship and does not worship idols is called a Yehudi. K'dechsiv, as the pasuk says, Itai Guvrin Yehudoyin. Rabbi Yeshimon ben Pazi ki havi pasach b'divrei hayomim, when he would begin in learning divrei hayomim, Armi hachi kol devaracha echad heim, all the words are the same. The anu yoidim l'darshan, and we know how to darshan. V'ishto hayuhudiya yolda es yered avi gador v'es chever avi shoicha v'es yikusuel. Okay, we'll stop here because this is going to get into a totally different sugya. Okay. All right, we'll continue with Rav Shimon ben Pazi on tomorrow's daf. Let's see if we have any questions here. V'shtia kadas ma hifresh kadas. So we said kadas Torah, just like that Torah is achila more than shtia. So too, when it comes to them, it was also more achila than there's more achila than shtia, and this is not just referring to stam at a party. Rashi says, Kadashul Torah is achilas mizbeach. When it comes to the mizbeach, there's more food, like karbonos, than shtia, like wine. Par, shloishim esrim, soilis, achila, v'nesa chatziyahin. So we had less wine on the mizbeach. So again, it's not just a party. Again, it's comparing this to, again, the Beis HaMikdash, the mizbeach, over and over, all these different connections and comparisons. That was question number 7. So let me just mark this down over here. Kadas Torah. Question 8. Mahu Shmod Hanoisif Shel Haman Hamuskam Megillah Madua Nikra Kach. So we know, as we saw, that he was actually called Memuchan because he was muchan for pranios. He was ready and prepared to cause problems for Klal Yisrael. TB1. Ksiv kol arum yasabadas. Xil yifrais ivelas. Almidar shubi gemara shiasabadas. Umi nohig ivelas. So this is referring to David HaMelech when it came to finding a wife.
it was done with das, and therefore people wanted to give their daughters over. Achashverosh was foolish, and therefore the daughters were hidden. Adkan.